of a shot of winning. We can beat anybody in the world, and I think we're going to win next Sunday.
And welcome back to the New York Jets Atlantic Flight podcast. We've got a special today. We're doing a midterm report. Halfway through the season, we all know what happened in that first half, and we all know what we want to happen in the second half, unless you are pro-tank. It's going to be an interesting second half. Technically, when we come back after a bye, we are currently, our record is 8-14. So we always bomb for some reason. The layoff isn't a good thing for us, but we're hoping that we can break this streak. So we're at the midterm mark now with the team, and it's going to be interesting to have a look to see exactly who's trending up, who's trending down. We're going to try and get through all the position groups. This might go on a little bit longer, so we'll try and not bore you too much, and we'll try and get this done. Hey, Timmy, we're going to get this started with the O-line, and you seem to be the O-line guy. So we're going to kick this off, and there's no better place to start. You were rocking the shirt in London, Armand Membu.
Yeah, so I was a big advocate for us taking Membu, as you all remember from the draft cycle. I think if the draft happened again today, I'd probably make the same pick if it were me. Which, you know, I know that there's been a few quarterbacks who've shown up and stuff, so that might be a little bit of a funny one. But for me, I think he's been absolutely solid, particularly from a run blocking perspective. Of 77 offensive tackles that have played this year and qualify, he's 15th in the league. And as a rookie, I just think that that's a fantastic performance, probably above and beyond what we would have expected. From a pass blocking perspective, he's middle of the pack, 31st. But again, as a rookie, very solid, 24th tackle in the league overall. And considering you have 64 starting offensive tackles and he's a rookie, I think we can be very happy with the return of our right tackle. So he's come in, he's looked athletic, he's a bulldozer when it comes to moving people off the ball. We especially saw that last week when he was just creating huge holes on the right-hand side. And credit to him. So that's kind of the starting point. So I would say acquisition-wise, if we're to look at Muji, I think that this is like, I'd give him an A for this acquisition, we'll say, right? Absolutely, I think he's going to be our right tackle for a very, very long time to come. Next up, I suppose, would be Joe Tippmann, who, controversial, I suppose, at the start of the year. I don't think any of us really wanted him to move to guard. But obviously with injuries happening to Vera Tucker, this is where we landed, right? And I kind of don't really fully agree with PFF's grading on him. They're a bit tougher on him than I would have been. Now they have him 34th out of 82 guards graded in run blocking at 62.3, which is a very solid score. They're a bit tougher on him in pass protection. But I do think as we look at pass protection, we have to really consider how long Justin Fields has been holding onto the ball. I think that grading of our offensive line, which has us, you know, probably a bit lower than I would have us overall. Us who watch every game, we know that like the offensive line is getting blamed for a lot of the misgivings of Justin Fields. So I think the run blocking grades are almost a better example of how well they're doing, if that makes sense. So I think Tippmann is going to stay at guard when it comes to the draft this year. I think we'll probably keep Myers on, but I still think I'd be looking to follow the lead of what the Eagles have done. They have 4 of their interior O-linemen on their roster have played center before. They're historically centers and they've come in and they've played guard. It's nice to have that kind of flexibility on the line. If it were me looking into the draft this year, probably around the 4th round, I'd be looking at picking up a center. I don't think we need to pick one up any earlier than that, given the gaps that we have in the team. Josh Myers, the big surprise package this year for all of us, I think. Didn't have a great year last year for Green Bay. We paid him backup money. His contract is very low. So he's on the cheap. 20th of 33 centers in run blocking. I think that's a bit harsh on him. I think that he's been very solid. I think he's been snapping the ball better than Tippmann was snapping it last year. I think he's been QB friendly. And I think that he's been very, very strong as well from a pass blocking perspective. So very happy with his performance so far this year as well. As we go, I suppose that takes us to Simpson, right? And this is where I suppose things start to get a little bit more funny. And I had his numbers up here. Here we go. So his run blocking grade is 53.7, which is not great. He's 56th out of 82 guards. And he's kind of middle of the pack then for pass blocking, but just hasn't been the player he was last year. I think last year he came in and he was an absolute dominant force from a run blocking perspective. He was moving people around. He was a terror. Just hasn't got the same kind of edge to him this year, I feel. So that's something for us to keep an eye on. I would have been an advocate for us kind of signing him to a longer term contract at the start of the year. I think that's unlikely to happen now. I think that we'll be looking at picking somebody up in free agency. So John Simpson probably been the weakest link of the O-line, I would say, season to date. And that takes us back to our other young guy then, Olufashinu, who is kind of the opposite to the others, right? He's scored really well from a pass blocking grade. He's 34th out of 77. Now, when we brought him in, we knew that was who he was. He was never going to be an elite run blocker. He's 57th out of 77 tackles from a run blocking perspective. That's who he was. I think your left tackle, you want him to be a better pass blocker, so I'm kind of okay with that too. He's getting a lot of heat because I think that he has made some mistakes this year, and those mistakes have been blown up and been made viral videos on the internet. But I think if you look at his game overall, I think he's been pretty solid. Not elite, but pretty solid. And I think I'm not as concerned about him as I see some people are online. I think that he's going to be okay. Room for growth there, but I think that we're going to be okay there. I think this is the bright spot of our entire team, if I'm honest with you. I think the O-line, even with Simpson, I think considering we lost AVT, a first line pick, so early on, before we got going at all, really, I think that this has been a real bright spot of the team, and I think that we can go from strength to strength with them, given what we saw last week. Was it 250 yards we had running last week, something like that? So feeling very positive about the O-line. And for me, I think he's done a great. Sorry, I'd give an A for picking up Myers as well, because Myers has just been, considering the cost, been absolutely brilliant.
Yeah, and no. You've done a great job there. And Green Bay were like, don't let the door hit you on the way out with Josh Myers as well, which was just like insane when you consider how he's turned out. I think that the story was in training camp that there was this great big thing of who's going to start at centre. Is it going to be Tittman or Myers? At that point, AVT was still right guard. It was just insane to even think that Josh Myers was going to be the centre. But look how it's turned out. Joe Tittman, as you've rightly said, I think is going to make that his own. Josh Myers is looking fairly settled, and I don't disagree with you in the draft. I think we probably will round 4. If we had a round 3, possibly round 3, but we don't have a round 3. I just want to give a shout out to the backups as well. Max Mitchell, I said this in one of the other podcasts that we did earlier on in the year. I would actually re-sign him. He's now turning into a really decent swing tackle. So I'm really happy with him. I like Xavier Newman, have done since he came in that disastrous game when we lost 10,000 centres. And he came in off the street, played really well. He can play interior line, no problem. He's even spelled it a couple of times in the preseason at left tackle and at right tackle. So he's an all-down lineman.
I'd give a bit of credit to Steve Hayden as well, our O-line coach. Like, we've had such bad O-line coaching for the last few years. It's just nice to see somebody come in, and you can actually see the likes of Max Mitchell progress as opposed to seeing guys come in and regress, which is what we're used to seeing, right? So credit to him. And last week, like, we've been calling for our offensive coordinator Tanner Engstrand to be starting to, try different packages, get a bit more creative. And when he did it last week, the O-line really stepped up and kind of adapted to the creativity, and I just think it was their best game by a long way.
And finally, your grade for the O-line, what was it going to be?
So this is a difficult one because obviously they're graded poorly because of Justin Fields, but I'd love to see them with a proper quarterback behind them. You'd have to give them a B+ because of that, but I feel like I want to give them an A because I just think that they're a really good group.
Yeah,
I feel very strong about them. That's
I would agree with that. I would actually agree with that. I'm taking the quarterback. It isn't the how their play is turning out isn't the fault of them. It's the fault of the quarterback holding onto the ball too long. It doesn't make them look good. Because that's happening, it's also affected the run game and all the rest of it. But as a unit, I think, I'm going to B+ A as well. Membu is having an all-pro season as well, so unbelievable. Possibly even offensive rookie of the year. Cheers for that, Timmy. We're going to scoot on over to the wide receivers. Ryan's going to start off this. Wide receivers and tight ends, would lump those in together, and then we'll flow into the running backs with Ryan. With Andy, beg your pardon. Ryan, wide receivers. We've got one wide receiver that we know is an absolute star, and then we've got everybody else. What's going on with the wide receiver room, and how do you think that they should grade out?
I just want to kick off by saying how fantastic that was as a coverage of the O-line there between the pair of you, because I had so many things in my head I wanted to say, and you guys literally covered all of it, and so it's a good job you didn't need to come to me on that.
Thanks, Ryan.
I'm gonna start off with the receiving core just by suggesting that these kind of figures are a little bit skewed based on the Bengals game, because looking at the statistics, it doesn't look as horrific as actually it probably has felt from the wide receiver and tight ends. But despite me caveating with that, it's not all doom and gloom from the receivers. Something that is probably concerning for that room is that out of the top 5 receiving yards players, only 2 of them are wide receivers, and 1 is a tight end. So it's not great viewing on paper. We knew that this wide receiver room was thin. We all felt early on in the year that the receiver room hadn't been addressed in the best way. Now, Garrett Wilson, there's not a lot I can say about him that hasn't been said already, really. He is our top receiving in yards, despite having suffered an injury and playing 2 less games than the rest. He's got just shy of 400 yards, which isn't really enough, if we're honest, and 4 TDs. Again, but we haven't been throwing the ball as much as we probably should have, or certainly not being able to. Again, this is another situation that's kind of affected by poor QB play, so it's going to be a bit tough to grade out on this because, again, it is all affected by different positions. But look, Garrett Wilson, he's been our best wide receiver for the last few years, and he'll continue to be that probably for the next few years. Mason Taylor has been a bright spot as tight end. And again, 242 yards off 42 targets, 29 receptions in 8 games, average reception of 8.3 yards, one touchdown. Those stats are kind of irrelevant because there's been games where we haven't even targeted him. So again, it's a bit of a lot of this is a bit of a skewed stat on the receiving room, because I feel like some of these players look better than their numbers. For me, similarly to what was said about Membu, I would still take Mason Taylor. We know I loved Harold Fannin Jr. coming out of this draft. We know that I like Deronde Gadsden coming out of this draft as well. But for me, Mason Taylor is a complete tight end and the tight end we needed. And as a result of that, I feel we're seeing better from Ruckert. There's no pressure on Ruckert to turn up and be the pass catcher or be the sole blocker in this team. And as a result, Ruckert is getting better as well. Now, there are a lot of issues with this receiving room because we're light on depth. We're seeing that already. The minute Wilson went down, we were looking at Josh Reynolds as a wide receiver 1, which just didn't work. The minute that Josh Reynolds went down, we're then talking about Tyler Johnson, who I think has done a fantastic job coming through. We all know how I feel about him. But there is shortcomings in terms of keeping a guy like Alan Lazard on this roster still. I do respect that there was work done to his contract and his cap hit got reduced severely to the point where he's almost on vet minimum. But I still think he's an empty jersey. Joe Caporoso says all the time that he's an empty jersey out there, and it does feel that way a lot of the time. And I think that there's other guys that we'd rather see there. So all that in mind, I'm ignoring the running backs in the receiving game, bearing in mind, because I know Andy's going to cover them anyway. But overall, I feel like this wide receiver tight end room is probably grading out at a C, even though individually I would grade out Wilson and Taylor in the A minus bracket. I think the issues come not from how they're playing, but how we're kind of targeting them and how we're utilizing them. And I don't think that's been good enough at times. I think there's a massive coup for Muji having brought in Tyler Johnson. But again, I don't feel like Josh Reynolds and Alan Lazard have really done it. And I think we're still all undetermined on Arian Smith. You can show me every graph in the world that tells me he's getting the best separation in the world. But until I start seeing him making plays, it's irrelevant. And that does come down again to the quarterback, but also he's got to catch some of those balls he's been dropping too. So for me, I think maybe I'm a bit harsh, but I think the receiving room is a C grade at the moment.
Yeah.
Just
Sorry.
just to say on that as well, right? Because do you know the way I knew we were going to be doing this podcast, and it kind of gave me a chance to go away and think, I suppose, individually about the groups. And something that really occurred to me as I've been watching these games as well throughout the year, like Justin Fields never gets past his first read, and that's why Garrett Wilson gets the ball every time, because he's his first read. And like for me, I've been really disappointed that we haven't seen anything happen in the slot. We haven't seen a wide receiver 2 step up, but they haven't really been targeted that much either, and they haven't been targeted because Fields just doesn't see them. And I think last week was the only week that I can think of. Even in week 1, it was the same. He was getting the ball out quick week 1. It was the only week where he actually targeted people, and when they were given the chance, they elevated themselves. So this for me is something that we really have to look out for the remainder of the season, just to see if he's going to be able to get past that first read, because it's debilitating. Because defenses know that all you have to do is take out his first target or make it more difficult, and all of a sudden he's scrambling, holding onto the ball, and it's a sack. So that's the one thing I would say. I think the grade is fair. It could even be a D, to be honest with you. But I just think that quarterback play is definitely debilitating.
Oh, there's been some harsh words there, Andy. Tight ends and wide receivers, is it really as bad as the guys who just painted it, or do you think that there's something else that can be done here?
No, I think it's perfectly fair to be very, very critical, both of Justin Fields as the quarterback, but of Muji and how he set up this wide receiver room to start the year. And Ryan kind of already mentioned that Arian Smith is the greatest wide receiver in the NFL according to certain graphs, and just isn't being used appropriately. Or it could just be that graphs will tell you any old BS, depending on how you set them up and how badly you interpret them. I think regardless of Fields, this wide receiver room is poor. I think there's a danger that we take too much away from the Bengals game. The Bengals are one of the worst secondaries in the NFL. And I think it's going to be interesting to see the team for the rest of the year. But I think we've seen what this room is already. I think Ryan will get to it when he talks tight ends some more, I think. But it's instructive that after Garrett Wilson, our next 2 kind of highest pass catches are a tight end and a running back. I think it's a poor situation, but I think we knew it was a poor situation going into the year as well. It was just that obvious to everyone.
Yeah. No one's mentioned this yet. I'm quite surprised. John Mechie, the third. We've got rid of Michael Carter the second. We've got a John Mechie the third. So we've gone from a second to a third. Interesting. This guy, he's quite interesting. He was a 2nd round pick out of Alabama, originally drafted by the Texans. He's now just been traded to us. He's only been in the league 3 years. Hasn't really done much. Hasn't uprooted any trees or anything. But now, this is what I find interesting. And this always surprises me. Garrett Wilson, he's in his 4th year. It feels like he's been here longer. Isaiah Williams, he's only in his 2nd year. Arian Smith, rookie. John Mechie, he's 3 years. And then you've got Alan Lazard, 7 years. Tyler Johnson, who's started to look pretty good. And I agree that the Bengals game is a bit of an outlier, 5 years. So those are our starting wide receivers at the moment. Well, we think that John Mechie is going to be a starter. The thing that's important about this, and I absolutely agree that the Bengals secondary is trash. They are absolute garbage, but you can only play in front of what you've got. So before we played the Bengals, it's really, really hard to say how our wide receiver core were playing. But because we have now got something on tape that we can see that these guys, when they are given the time and the space, they can actually do it. And I think that is a really good thing going into the bye. Now they can work on this. I think I'm hoping that we see a different wide receiver core come out, and we see people actually developing like we have seen with the tight ends. But I'm not totally down as much as you guys on the wide receiver room. I think we have got people on the practice squad, Brandon Smith, Skinner. They need to come up. I believe Brandon Smith just been elevated to the 53, so we might get to see him. I'm not as out, and for me, despite the quarterback play, I think probably I'm going to go C. C or C minus. So maybe I can see a little bit of light. Had it not been for Garrett Wilson, now I'm probably looking at a D. But do you want to carry on, Andy, with the tight ends?
Yeah, sure. I think the bright spot of probably the draft outside of Membu has been Mason Taylor so far. I think Taylor has been what we hoped he would be when the Jets drafted him. I think it's been surprising to get anything at all out of Jeremy Ruckert. But I think getting anything out of him was better than what we hoped for. Ryan, I know you wanted to talk a little bit about the tight ends as well. Was there anything you wanted to put in?
It was a purely a statistical thing to look at from a first down point of view. So both Garrett Wilson and Mason Taylor have both had 18 first downs. For Garrett Wilson, that represents 50% of his receptions, and it's around about 45% of Mason Taylor's receptions, which is just ridiculous, to be honest.
Insane.
That's insane. That's concerning for how we play. And another again, a little stat here. You're looking about yards after the catch for Garrett Wilson is about 25% of his yards. So he's got 100 yards after the catch from 395 yards. And Mason Taylor has 84 yards after catch for 242 yards. So it's about a third of his yards as well. Just mental.
It's incredible. Another thing, just before we get off tight ends as well, what is happening with Jelani Woods? How come we're not seeing him? We're not. Stone Smart, I believe, is injured, but I would have thought that we would have seen Jelani Woods by now. That said, it isn't a bad thing that we're not seeing him because Ruckert's game has now improved. Taylor, I think we've got a really, really good tight end, and I said this the other week. I think it was last week I said it. I think if the draft was now, the production that Taylor's got, you're probably talking a back end round one pick. The way he's playing at the moment, he looks a solid tight end one. But are we going to go back into running backs, Andy?
Yeah, I think you've got to really start with running backs talking about Breece Hall. He is the RB1 on the team, had a massive game against the Bengals last weekend. But it's kind of a similar story to most years that we've seen with Breece in that he's very hit or miss in games. He's had 3 games so far this year where he's gone over 100 yards on the ground. And the game against Miami, he was close enough that you can say it's a decent game. But because of the way he plays, he's averaging around sort of 60 yards a game because he's one of those backs where he's that home run hitter style of running back. So he's either getting over 100 yards a game and going for big explosive plays, or he's getting next to nothing. I think he's in the games where he's not gone over 100 yards, he's averaging kind of 30 yards a game, which obviously isn't great, especially not with Braylon Allen out and Davis only flashing a little bit throughout the year. But there's always that receiving threat as well. And I think for the first time this year, we saw it properly against the Bengals, him actually start to not only start catching the ball, but passing it as well, which was a lovely thing to see Engstrand be a little bit more creative with the offense. And kind of our second sort of most impactful running back, which I suppose we all expected going into the year, is actually Justin Fields. He's got nearly 300 yards on the ground in 7 games, which is a huge part of his game. And I know we saw him come back kind of tentatively when he came back after his concussion, but we finally sort of started to see him get into some more designed runs last week as well. So I think running backs is another bright spot for us, and a lot of that comes off what Timmy was saying about the O-line as well, in terms of the quality of the run blocking that they're getting as well. And the one bit we probably didn't mention, or the one person we didn't mention so far who's been such a big plus for our run blocking, has been Andrew Beck, who you see such a massive difference when he's there playing the full-back role in terms of what they get when they're running those heavier sets with either tight ends or Max as the 6th offensive lineman as well. So I think running back is really positive for us. I'd be tempted to go with a B overall. I'm not sure what you all think.
Yeah, I would think that beginning of this year, if you told me that the tight ends were going to be this successful and looked this good, because it's not only their receiving skills that we associate the tight ends with, as you've rightly pointed out, and I think we need to clarify this, that Beck is not just a fullback, he's a tight end as well. He plays a little bit of both, and you're right, when he does come in, he just makes stuff happen. But yeah, I would go along with that. I'm really, really happy with this tight end room, and I think B is appropriate for them. Yeah, not bad at all. Timmy, did you want to bring something up about the tight ends as well? Sorry, I meant running backs there, Timmy. You could give us a grade for the running backs.
Yeah, so for me, it's a really tough one, right? Because Andy, I think, made the perfect point, right? So I'm going to use Breece Hall as an example, right? So he's rushing snaps this year. He's 8th ranked, and he's 9th ranked in carries. He's 10th in yards per attempt, which sounds like, if you think about it at a high level, that's all pretty good, okay? But he's 25th in rushing touchdowns. And I just, that extra bit of a push at the end hasn't been there. We haven't got to the red zone enough as part of that, but just if you look at his high level numbers, 8 in snaps, 10th in yards per attempt, that looks fine. Look at his targets, he's 12th running back in targets, 12th in receptions, and 11th in receiving yards. So it all seems okay. But to Andy's point, it's been really up and down. There's been some games where he's been on fire, 2 or 3 games in particular. I suppose, to be fair to him, the Buccaneers, we knew, have a fantastic rush defense, as do the Broncos, and I think he did pretty good against the Broncos. So he's been up and down. To me, I just think it was a bit telling that his best game of the year came just before the trade deadline. So I think that he might have been protecting himself and keeping himself healthy, knowing that that was coming. Maybe not a nice thing to say, but I feel that that's a thing. I think Isaiah Davis has just broke out in the last game, which has been a big help to us. Who am I forgetting? Who's the Braylon Allen?
Braylon Allen, yeah.
I was expecting more from Braylon Allen this year, to be honest with you. I kind of expected him to bring a bit more juice than he has. So I'm a bit disappointed in him. So because of that as well, I'm gonna give them probably a C overall. They've been good in patches. I think they were particularly good in the first game of the season and the last game of the season that we played. But because they haven't been potent in the red zone, I'd probably give them a C, because I expected a bit more from some of the personnel.
Oh God. Blimey, I've got slightly higher rankings. Again, I think a lot of with the wide receivers and the tight ends, I think the running backs have also been affected by the quarterback play, which we're going to get into in a second. The problem I've got with the wide receivers, the tight ends, and the running backs is because the quarterback is holding onto this ball too long. We can't get the run game going because we can't get play. It's all a vicious circle because we can't get play action and the RPO going. Everything is like falling in on itself, and I think that was a big part of what happened. We were going to be rolling out this smash mouth football, going run heavy all the time, and we've got the personnel to do it. But we just the defenses that we were facing, they were just focusing in on the run, and they knew that if they stopped the run, we were going to have to focus on the pass, which is not Fields' bread and butter. So I think the run game has suffered again because of the quarterback play. But I would grade, because I think we've got the talent there. You've just mentioned Isaiah Davis. He had a breakout game against the Bengals. I'm quite high on Davis. I'm also very, very high on Braylon Allen. If we end up trading Breece, and there's a good possibility that we will, or my preference is we extend him in another 2 years. I'm going to grade them C+, the running back room. But we need to start talking about quarterbacks because this could take a long time. Timmy, Justin Fields, our starting quarterback, he has not been good into 8 games. Again, as Andy said, this secondary that we've played against the Bengals, they were not good. So take it with a pinch of salt. But again, we have to use this as a barometer of where we are. So we've seen that what he can do if he's given the time. And he's had a rough time of it, so maybe this is a turning point. Quarterbacks, tell us what you got.
To be honest, Gus, it's been ugly. We were ranked 32nd in the league, rock bottom in passing yards per game, 156 yards per game. For context, Dallas is top at 263. Middle of the pack, you're looking at 215 yards. So you're down 60 yards per game compared to average, which is just really telling. And we've had a couple of games where we've been okay, but like for the most part, it's been pretty egregious. And because of it, we're the 9th worst team in the league in total offensive yards, 10th worst team in the league in points per game. And I'm pretty sure we were like 3rd worst in the league before the last game. So I think the last game is inflating us a little bit as well. So I just think he's been very poor. Like I mentioned earlier in the pod, he never gets past his first read. He still, even though he never gets past his first read, he seems to hold on to the ball long enough to get to 7 or 8 reads. So I don't know why that is. He just goes to his first read, it's not there, puts his head down, kind of fumbles backwards, goes nowhere, takes a sack, and all of a sudden we're in negative yardage. So the fact that we've had a game where he was minus 10 yards net says it all. I suppose, to be fair to him, after Woody came out and gave him a really hard time, he did better last week, and that's good, but I thought he did well first week as well, and then putting together 6 poor games, you have to take that into account. Now, if he can stack another 2 games in a row, I think he'll put us in a better position, but I think the first stat I led with, rock bottom in the league for passing yards per game. That's it. That to me is absolutely telling on how his performance has been this year.
And we need to mention the other guys as well. Obviously, we haven't seen Brady Cook, so we can pretty much skirt over Brady Cook. He's really he might have dressed the other day, had things not gone the way they did with Tyrod Taylor. But we need to talk about Tyrod Taylor as well, because obviously he's been in the mix as well. Ryan, do you want to pick up Tyrod Taylor and talk your opinions on Justin Fields as well?
I think grade wise, if it wasn't for a couple of bright spots, we'd be talking an F on this QB room. It's been abysmal. It's been disappointing. It's even when Tyrod came in and we sort of improved. It's just been poor. Let's be honest. Tyrod has struggled to stay healthy. Fields has struggled to pass beyond the first down marker. It's just been heinous. It's not been good at all. Do you know, like there have been positives. The Bengals game was positive, but we can talk about the secondary being awful. The Steelers game was kind of slightly a little bit better than some of the other games. The Buccaneers game where Tyrod started, it was okay. Wouldn't say much more than that. And again, when he came in the second half of the game against the Panthers, it was a slight improvement. But really, I don't think that you can grade this room much better than a D minus. It genuinely would be an F if it wasn't for the fact that we've won a game. And I cannot stress the thing I will caveat with is and say I believe the Muji made the correct moves this offseason, signing Justin Fields rather than drafting a quarterback in the first round, because we needed Membu, we needed that bookend. The free agent market for QBs was not forgiving, and realistically, this was the better move than sticking with Aaron Rodgers and having that cap hit spread across the next few years in a really disgusting way. So yeah, the room's a D minus for me, and that's about as nice as I can be. I think Tanner Engstrand's done a reasonable job with what he's had, but I'm quite happy for Andy to pick up and do a bit more on Tanner.
Yeah, go ahead, Andy.
Yeah, like everyone's already said, Fields has been a really frustrating watch. Even in the Bengals game, JT O'Sullivan over at the QB school did a breakdown of Fields that was free on YouTube this week. And you can see the positives with Fields, you really can. You can see what people who thought he could be something coming into this year saw. But even against the Bengals, he's holding on to that ball, and you feel like you're screaming at the TV every week to wide open guys that Fields still hasn't seen, but somehow you have. even that pass that Ruckert took for a decent gain that kind of almost closed the game out on Sunday, it was just, he was open, and he was open for a decent second and a half. And Fields eventually gets there, but if it's a better secondary, if it's a better pass rush, he's not going to get that chance. And I think the most frustrating part is the impact it's had on being able to properly evaluate what Tanner Engstrand's been able to do with the team, because the Jets have had to get away from whatever the plan is so early on, because we've been behind in games, it's not working. And as Gus said, I think teams have been really clamping down on the run and forcing us to pass. So it's been hard to evaluate what this offense properly looks like. And it felt like on Sunday, for the first time, we actually did get to see it, whatever the reasons were. We got to see some decent play design, some good ideas, scheming guys open. There was worrying things to look at as well, but Engstrand's a rookie play caller. It's going to happen. But yeah, it was interesting. I'm interested to see what the rest of you guys think about what Engstrand's looked like so far.
I think that's a pretty good summary. I'm quite happy with Engstrand as well. I think he's done an excellent job. It has been a little bit tricky. Sometimes you've not, when you haven't got anything to work with, when you've got a Garrett Wilson and then everybody else, but you've got a really good run game, but then your quarterback is so off the boil, it can't be easy. But what we have seen is, despite Fields' his woes, we have seen, especially if you're looking at the All-22, you can see that Engstrand is scheming players open. I mean, we had this debacle the other day with Kurt Warner, because there were various Jets fans saying, well, Justin Fields isn't doing this, he's not doing that, he's not going through his reads. And it turns out Kurt Warner says, well, you know what, that was a screen pass, that was the first read, there might have been a player open, but his first read was the screen. So what us mere mortals look at sometimes isn't what is actually being deployed. But when you look at the All-22, you do see that Engstrand is doing a good job. Does anybody else want to just touch on Engstrand before we move on to special teams?
I'm just going to say something a little bit negative about him, if that's okay. So,
good grief.
One thing I will say, right, is every time we've done a preview, we have been shouting and hoping for more integration of tight end play, more screen passes, more usage of Breece Hall, a bit more trick play. Like, I suppose the staple of the Lions where he came from was that there's a bit of trickery about them. It was a modern offense that had a bit of variety to it. And I think that for me, I've been pulling my hair out anyway, to be honest with you, most weeks, like demanding more, and it hasn't happened. And the week just gone is the first week it's happened, and we put up 39 points. So if that's a turning point for Tanner, brilliant. But like I said it last week, I felt going into that game that it was a big game for him, because I felt that if he continued the way he was going, having only had one good game this season, really, being honest, before that, which was the Steelers game, I felt his job was very much on the line. And it really hurt me, because after week one, I was so excited about his potential, and then he just fell off a cliff. Last week, he made a big comeback, I felt, for him. And I know he's had to deal with Justin Fields in the QB play, but there's ways to get around that too, make it more, like, simplify the offense, like a bit more screen. We haven't seen any of that, right? We haven't seen any of the screen passes. So it's another big week when we play a very good Browns defense after the bye week. It's a very big week for Tanner, because he needs to do what Wilkes did. Wilkes went away, stacked together 2 or 3 good weeks on defense, where we could feel good that actually, we're going places and things were developing. I think Tanner needs to do the same.
I just want to add this before we get over to Ryan, who's going to kick us off with the special teams. Kick us off. See what I did there?
Boom.
Whoa, yeah. So I just want to say this. If we had this Bengals game in week 3 or week 4, I reckon we lose that game. So if you look at what we've done before, there's at least 3 games that we've actually been in, and we've ended up shooting ourselves in the foot for whatever it was. Pre-snap penalties, holding penalties, all the rest of it, and then you got the defensive side of the ball penalties as well. So we ended up losing that game by ourselves, and that was nothing to do. Well, you could say it's nothing to do with it. It is everything to do with coaching, but it's more the execution of what the players are doing. But as I say, I think if we'd had this Bengals game at week 3, week 4, we'd have lost it. So now we've got okay, the Bengals defense is awful, but we've played other awful defenses and we've still found a way to lose. So I'm hoping that we have turned the corner here, and we've just found a way now to win, to close out games. Again, the Bengals came back onto the field with, at 1 minute 30, and there wasn't a Jets fan in the world that thought, yep, the defense are going to come on, they're going to shut them out, and then we're going to close the game out, take a kneel. No one thought that, and it actually happened. They're playing better. They're playing with more discipline. They're playing with more character, and coaching matters. And I think and I hope that this is a turning point, but we will see, as you say, against a very good Cleveland D. Ryan, let's bring up this special teams, brother. What you got? Because Chris Banjo, he's pulling out the bag, isn't he?
I'm really happy with the special teams unit. We're a big fan of special teams on this podcast, and I think that Chris Banjo has completely lived up to the billing. I think we've had our issues with the special teams, with different returners and things like that, where maybe people should have gone off the roster or never made the roster in the first place. But I think they've done the right things in terms of changing up the personnel where they've needed to. Isaiah Williams has proved himself following a bit of a ropey start, so I think it was good that they did stick with him. That being said, I think the returners has probably been the weak link of Banjo's special teams unit, and it's just through a lack of consistency. Keeney Nwangwu hasn't been able to stay healthy, which has kind of hampered that. Obviously, we had to ship off Xavier Gibson pretty quickly, and again, like I say, he shouldn't have made the roster, but Isaiah Williams has stepped up. So I think overall, for the returning aspect, that's probably the weakest part of special teams, and even that I'd probably still grade out at a B+. But Nick Folk, 100% field goal kicking percentage, 100 extra point kicking percentage. What can you give other than an A for that? I'd probably even say A+ because his kickoffs have been pretty decent too. So I can't fault Nick Folk. That's a hard thing to say 5 times fast.
Well, you brought up that, sorry, on Nick Folk, you brought up that interesting stat the other day that he's found a way on these kickoffs to drop it. And he was rated something like 2nd overall in the NFL, but his kickoffs are absolutely superb.
Yeah, second best in the league. So there's nothing to fault with his game at the moment, and I think an A grade is about all you can give him. I don't think you can give him any less.
You can't.
so he's done everything asked of him, and similarly of Austin McNamara, I feel like he's playing at an all-pro level. His punts are just, the hang time is incredible. It really gives our gunners a chance to get there, and the stuff that Banjo is scheming for us to be able to get to those the returners from these punts and give us good field position or give us an edge as such. It's fantastic. This is the phase of the game, as much as O-line is probably our strongest feature on O&D. Special teams is probably our strongest phase of play of the three of them, and it's been probably the most consistent since day one, barring some of those return issues. So Austin McNamara is another A for me. So overall grade, I'm going to say A-, just because that returning consistency. But special teams overall, I think, has been fantastic. I've really enjoyed it. I think Chris Banjo deserves all the accolades, and I'd grade him out at an A- as well.
Yeah, he's had some injuries to deal with as well, and he has done incredibly well. And Austin McNamara, arguably best player on the team, which is not what you want to hear as your punter as the best player on the team. But Timmy, special teams, how do you like it?
I think that Ryan summarised it really well there. Just a few little small things to add. PFF have graded our special teams unit as the 5th best in the league, so it's nice to be that high and that good at something, we'll say. And we're only a hair off of 4th, so I actually think that we'll continue to grow there because, to his point, Folk is 100%. 5 of his kicks have been over 50 yards as well, so not bad for an old boy, right? I think McNamara, as he said, has been all pro, so nothing to add there. But just the return game, we've been, I suppose we've been quite tough on Banjo about some of the mistakes that they made earlier in the season. And fair play to him, they've got better and better and gone from strength to strength. And seeing players who we probably would have been happy to let go for good, starting to have resurgence, like Isaiah Williams last week. That's credit to him. And actually, while we're talking about evolution and from a coaching perspective, I probably should have touched on with the O-line as well. All the pre-snap penalties have dried up. We've the odd one here and there, but compared to the way it was at the start of the season, credit to that group as well. But just to say, I suppose, Banjo, we were told he was a rock star coming in. He's proven his point.
Yeah, he is.
A+.
Yeah, really good. I didn't grade Engstrand as well. Yeah, I would say B+ as well. Again, considering what he's working with as well. Andy, special teams, Chris Banjo. Is there anything more that this guy can't do? Because he's looking like an absolute steal as well.
Yeah, and it's been really good to watch him evolve what the special teams are actually doing as well. He hasn't kind of stuck with what he did at the start of the year. He's trying different things out, which is great to see with some of the new rules, particularly on kickoffs. But he's trying to use his players in the most innovative ways he can. And I think the guys touched on McNamara and the punt team, and Ryan mentioned because McNamara has been able to get like the hang time and stuff, he has the gunners. So Quantez Stiggers and Arian Smith has stepped up in that regard as well. The last couple of weeks, they've looked really, really good, and it's led to McNamara having some great stats in terms of more than half of his punts either go for a fair catch or get down by the coverage team, which is a credit to the entire squad. The only thing I'll disagree on slightly is I've been a little bit disappointed with the kickers on the kickoffs. I think they even had McNamara doing the kickoffs last game, just because apart from kicking the ball out of bounds, the biggest sin you can kind of commit with the new kickoff rules is getting a touchback, particularly in the early part of the end zone. And I think Falk and McNamara have both been a little bit hit and miss with that one. So I think it's a great special teams unit, but it can get even better. We get some good return guys in and someone who can take advantage of the new kickoff rules. I think will look really, really good.
Yeah, that's a great synopsis there. Cheers, Andy. Before we wrap this up, so we've given all our grades and things. Let's have a hot take session. Let's start off with Timmy. Hot takes, because we got the trade deadline. It's coming next Tuesday, I think it is. It will be 9 p.m. UK time. Is it 4 p.m? Yeah, it will be 4 p.m. US time. Timmy, any hot takes you got for us?
I'm not sure if it's a hot take. I'm kind of stealing somebody else's thunder, but Rich Cimini said in his podcast last week that they will take phone calls on Will McDonald. Now, we know that we don't like our D-line, right? We know that beyond the front four, that we don't have much depth there, so this would obviously set us back a little bit on defense. But we've seen that AG and Muji are very willing to move out players who look good in the last regime because they're not their types. Will McDonald is, as we know, a speed rusher. He probably can't do it all, and I think he probably is more suited to the Salah offense, which was built on the front four just getting to the quarterback. Whereas I think that there's a bit more demanded of our edges in this scheme. So look at what they did in Detroit as well. Two big, strong guys. So I think everyone's talking about JJ. I think JJ probably fits the mold more. I think he stays. I'd be very interested to see what we would get from McDonald if they do take that call.
Yeah, I think McDonald could be on his way. He's not a third down, 3 down edge, and he's going to want to get paid before long. And I can't see them letting him do a Bryce Huff again. So yeah, I think that is a pretty good take. Ryan, have you got any hot takes for us?
I think that we're going to trade for a safety. I think we bring in a safety. That's probably the hot take, if it is such a thing as a hot take, because we're going to need help there. I don't think they're confident in relying on Tony Adams. We've seen what he can do, and we've seen that he lost his job already. So short of an incredible bounce back, I'm pretty confident they're going to go out and grab a guy.
And Cisco's on IR as well.
Yeah, I think that's what's going to force their hand to bring someone in, because obviously he was only on a 1-year deal for $8 million anyway, so they're not on the hook to do anything with him next year. So if they've got an opportunity to trade and bring a guy in, then they may as well just let Cisco kind of contract out on the IR.
Yeah.
So So that's my kind of hot take. I do believe that we probably bring in an offensive player as well. But what type of offensive player, I'm not quite sure.
Yeah, I agree with everything you've said, and I think that is another good hot take. But Andy, what else have you got?
Mine's pretty similar to Ryan's in a way, because I do think there's a chance that we're buyers at the trade deadline. Probably nothing fancy, not moving any first round picks or anything like that. But we've got quite a lot of day 3 picks at the moment, and it's the one area that we've seen Muji actually be effective. My hot take is I actually think we make a move for a quarterback.
Ooh.
Not a starter for 2026 by any means, but I think this team needs some more backup and potentially someone to take over from Field. So I don't know if we see us make a move for someone like Jameis or Russ or someone else that the Giants don't particularly want at the moment, but I don't think Glenn and Muji will be happy going into the rest of the year with Fields and an injured Tyrod Taylor.
We did bring 2 quarterbacks in for talks. I think, was it Dorian Thompson Robinson, whatever his name is?
Yeah, and Desmond Ridder.
Desmond Ridder, yeah. So they did come in for talks. So yeah, I think that's another valid hot take as well. Yeah, my hot take isn't really a hot take. It's pretty much lukewarm. At the beginning of the season, I did think that there was a good chance that Breece Hall wouldn't be a Jet come trade deadline. I now think he will be a Jet come trade deadline. I do think he will get extended. The reason why I think he'll get extended is because we will be drafting a quarterback high next year, and you want to put experienced, good people around them. Agreed that we've still got Braylon Allen. Is he a running back 1? And we've got Isaiah Davis. Is he a running back 1? I don't think so. And there's a chance where you could pick up a rookie in the draft, but then you don't want another rookie starting with another rookie. Not really, not ideally. You want to surround them with experience. So I do believe that Breece is going to get extended. Anyway, guys, it's been an absolute blast doing this. It's so good coming into this bye week with the win, and we get to revel in it for 2 weeks. And of course, as Jets fans, we'll all be watching Red Zone this Sunday, so it's a good time to be a Jets fan right now. We don't often get to say that, but anyway, we'll be back soon. Thanks for listening. If you like what you hear, please give us a like and hit that subscribe button. And as always, go.
Y'all know what to say. On 3. 1, 2, 3.